Have you ever noticed how some old country gardens seem calmer, cleaner, and less battered by insects without a spray schedule that never ends? And have you ever wondered why those gardens often look stronger even when they are planted in the same weather, the same soil, and the same summer heat as everybody else's? That is the Amish lesson I want to walk through with you today. Because the real Amish approach to pest control is not about chasing every bug with a bottle. It starts with the soil, then the way the plants are arranged, then the insects you invite into the garden, then the way you watch the plants every day. And only after that do you reach for a homemade spray or a physical barrier. By the end of this, you will know how to build a backyard garden that pests find less attractive, how to spot trouble before it spreads, and how to use a few simple methods that fit a real home garden. No synthetic pesticide routine, no panic spraying every week. Just a practical system that works with nature instead of constantly fighting it. The Amish philosophy behind this is a word worth remembering: Gelassenheit. It is a kind of willing submission to the natural order, not weakness, not giving up. It means you stop acting like the garden is a machine you can bully into obedience, and you start working with the way living things actually behave. That sounds philosophical, but in the garden, it is extremely practical. If your soil is poor, your plants are weak. If your plants are weak, insects and disease move in faster. If your beds are one solid block of the same crop, pests can find them like a buffet line. And if you never make room for beneficial insects, then the bad insects get the whole table. I have watched this play out for years in home gardens around Ohio. A neighbor once called me in a panic because his cabbage had been hammered by worms. He had done a lot of things right in his mind. He watered, he fertilized, he planted on time, but he had one long row of cabbage, no diversity, no flowering plants for beneficial insects, and no routine scouting. He was treating the symptom and ignoring the system. Once he changed the way he planted, the pressure dropped fast. That is the real Amish lesson. Do not just ask, what kills the bug? Ask, why is the bug comfortable here in the first place? And that question starts in the soil. Healthy soil is not a luxury. It is the foundation of pest resistance. A strong plant is not just prettier, it is physically tougher. Its stems are firmer, its leaves hold up better, and its roots can search deeper for water and nutrients. When soil is alive with organic matter and microbes, the plant does not have to struggle as hard to stay upright and productive. That matters because stressed plants leak opportunity to pests. A stressed plant is like a door left half open. The practical move is simple. Every year, add about 2 to 3 inches of finished compost over the bed, which is roughly 5 to 8 centimeters if you prefer to think that way. If the bed is new or very poor, you can work a portion of that into the top layer and leave the rest as a top dressing. The important word is finished. It should smell like rich earth, not like ammonia, manure that is still hot, or something that needs more time. Many Amish gardeners favor compost made from horse or cow manure that has fully broken down. That is not because manure is magical. It is because old, well-aged manure carries nutrients and organic matter without burning the roots or creating a mess of fresh, unstable material. It feeds the soil life. And once the soil life improves, the plants can stand up better to pressure from insects and disease. Here is the mistake most gardeners make. They think compost is just a fertilizer substitute, and they stop there. It is not just food. It is a system builder. If your soil is compacted, tight, and low in organic matter, one bag of compost will not flip the whole story overnight. It takes steady work. Usually 1 season improves things. 2 seasons make the difference obvious. If the soil has been neglected for years, give it time. That is not failure. That is how soil actually heals. And if kneeling is hard on your back or knees, do not make it harder than it needs to be. Use a long-handled scoop, a garden cart, or a wheelbarrow and dump it in sections. Spread it from a standing position if you can. Gardening should fit your body, not punish it. There is also a low-cost version of this. If you have shredded leaves, leaf mold, old compost from your own pile, or access to well-aged manure from a local source, that can be nearly free. The point is not fancy product. The point is organic matter. Rich soil is the cheapest pest control you will ever buy because it strengthens the plant before the pests ever show up. Once the soil is right, the next Amish move is to stop planting in huge blocks of the same crop. This is where interplanting comes in. A pest does not think like a person. It does not walk into your garden and say, "I only want the fourth plant in the row." It follows smell, shape, and habit. A solid block of one crop sends a very strong signal. It says, "Everything you want is right here." Mixed planting breaks that signal. Take tomatoes and basil. That is a classic pair for a reason. Basil can help confuse some pests, and even when the pest effect is modest, the planting pattern still helps because it breaks up the clean scent of a tomato block. And yes, it also gives you a better kitchen harvest, which is never a bad thing. Cabbage with dill or cilantro is another useful pairing. Those herbs can help confuse the scent trail that cabbage moths and related pests use when they are searching for a place to lay eggs. Marigolds around the perimeter are often used to help make the bed less inviting to certain pests, especially when you are also trying to protect the edges of the planting. Now, I want to be honest here. Companion planting is not magic. Basil will not cast a spell over your tomato row. Marigolds are not a force field. But when you mix crops, you make it harder for pests to find and settle on the target. You also make the bed more attractive to beneficial insects. That is the real value. The mistake here is throwing in companions only because some chart told you to, without thinking about spacing or airflow. If the plants are crowded, humidity rises, leaves stay wet longer, and disease pressure goes up. So the goal is not a jungle. The goal is a mixed, readable bed with enough variation to confuse pests and enough room for the plants to breathe. That balance matters more than any single plant pairing. If you are using raised beds, this becomes even more important. Put the taller plants where they will not shade out the shorter ones. Let the basil sit near the tomatoes, not buried under them. Put dill or cilantro where you can let some of it bloom later in the season if you want to feed beneficial insects. Think layers, not chaos. And that leads to another thing Amish gardeners do well. They make the garden useful to the insects that help them. A lot of gardeners want to kill every insect they see. That is usually where the trouble starts. If you remove all the predators, the pests have no competition. Nature does not leave empty space for long. Beneficial insects like lady beetles, lacewings, and parasitic wasps do a great deal of pest control for free. The trick is not trying to control them. The trick is giving them a reason to stay. That means planting nectar and pollen sources around your vegetables. Yarrow is one. Dill is another. Sweet alyssum is a very good one because it blooms for a long time and stays small enough for garden edges. Fennel can work too, though it needs room because it can become a large plant. These flowers and herbs do not just make the garden look cheerful. They feed the good insects when the vegetables are not blooming much. The common mistake is waiting until pests are everywhere and hoping the beneficial insects arrive fast enough to save the day. Usually they do not. You want them already in the neighborhood. That means sowing or transplanting these support plants early enough that they begin flowering while the vegetables are still building. If you do that, you create a place where the predators and parasites that feed on pests can live all season. You are not just gardening for beauty. You are building a working habitat. And yes, some people hear wasps and immediately get nervous. These are not the yellow jackets trying to steal your sandwich. These are tiny garden allies doing quiet work most people never notice. Now let me give you one of the habits that might do more than any spray bottle on your shelf. A short morning walk through the garden can save a season. Amish gardeners are often very consistent about watching the garden closely. 15 minutes in the morning is enough. You do not need a huge routine. You need a regular one. Walk slowly. Look under leaves. Check the undersides, because that is where a lot of pests hide. Watch for eggs, clusters of aphids, chewed edges, curled leaves, sticky residue, tiny holes, and any leaf that suddenly looks tired. If one plant starts to look odd, compare it with the one next to it. That one habit helps you catch a problem before it spreads. The reason this works is simple. Pest populations rarely stay tiny for long when the weather favors them. A few aphids can become a sheet of aphids. A few cabbage worms can strip a plant if you give them a week too much time. Early detection is everything. The mistake is telling yourself you will get around to it later in the day, later in the week, after the rain, or after the errands. By then, the problem is bigger. If you catch a pest while it is still a small colony, you can remove it by hand, prune off the worst leaf, or treat one plant instead of the whole garden. That keeps the solution simple and cheap. And yes, hand removal is a real tool. If you find insects you want gone, drop them into a bucket of soapy water. Keep the mix mild. You do not need a harsh detergent blast. A small bucket that lives near the garden is often enough. This is old-fashioned, low-cost, and effective. It is also one of the best examples of how Amish-style gardening avoids unnecessary chemicals without becoming helpless. This is also the place to mention one of the cheapest pest control tools of all: observation. It costs nothing. It saves money. It saves time. It saves plants. Now let us talk about trap cropping, because this is one of those ideas that sounds almost too simple until you see it work. Trap cropping means planting something pests love more than your main crop, so they go there first. That sounds backward, but it is a smart way to redirect pressure. Nasturtiums can pull aphids toward themselves and away from beans or peppers. Radishes can help draw flea beetles away from more valuable plants like eggplant. Some gardeners use a sacrificial border of a plant the pest likes better, then remove that trap crop once it is heavily infested. The mistake here is letting the trap crop become the new pest factory. It works only if you monitor it. If you plant nasturtiums and then forget them, you have simply created a second problem. The trap crop is not the goal, it is the decoy. Place it where it does the most good. Along the edge is often enough. Keep it separated enough that pests do not have an easy highway from the trap to the main crop. And if one plant in the trap row gets overrun, pull it before the infestation spreads. This is a great low-cost strategy for a backyard gardener who does not want to spray every week. It gives pests a preferred target without forcing you into a chemical cycle. It also feels old-fashioned because it is old-fashioned. But old does not mean weak. Sometimes it means proven. Now I want to give you the homemade repellent spray piece, because I know many gardeners want something they can mix themselves when they need a quick assist. The Amish-style spray is not about poisoning insects. It is about making the plant less appealing. Here is the simple version. Crush 4 or 5 cloves of garlic. Add 2 hot peppers, chopped if you want more strength. Put them in 1 quart of warm water. Let that steep overnight. Strain it well the next day. Then add about 1 teaspoon of liquid soap, just enough to help it stick to the leaves. Spray it lightly on the leaves, especially where pests are active. Do it in the evening or on a cloudy day so you do not scorch the foliage. Test a small area first, because some plants are more sensitive than others. The mistake people make is treating this like a miracle bomb. It is not. It does not wipe out every insect on contact. It makes the plant taste and smell less inviting. That means it works best as part of a system, not as the whole system. And here is the part I want you to remember. This is a repellent, not a pesticide. That distinction matters. You are shifting the balance, not trying to carpet bomb the garden. Another practical note: always rinse your hands after handling hot peppers. If you use any spray, even a homemade one, wear gloves and avoid getting it in your eyes. Common sense beats bravado every time. Now let us talk about one of the most clever physical tricks in the whole toolkit. It is cheap, it looks a little funny, and it works for the right job. For young transplants, especially when you are worried about cutworms or other stem-chewing pests, you can use a cardboard cylinder around the stem. A toilet paper tube works surprisingly well for many small seedlings. You set it around the young plant and sink it into the soil a bit so it forms a barrier around the stem. The point is to block the pest from reaching the tender stalk while the plant is still vulnerable. Once the stem thickens and the plant gets established, the risk goes down. The mistake here is leaving too much of the tube above the soil line. If it sits too high, the pest can still get in underneath or around it. You want enough depth to create a real barrier. And you need to check moisture because cardboard breaks down over time. That is fine. It is supposed to be temporary protection. If you do not want to use cardboard, there are other physical barriers too. A collar made from sturdy paper, thin plastic, or similar material can work. The category matters more than the exact object. You are building a small wall until the plant can defend itself on its own. That is very much in line with the Amish mindset. Protect the young plant. Do not overcomplicate it. Let the plant mature into strength. There is one more thing I want to add here, because this is where many gardeners either overdo it or give up too soon. You do not need every tool in the box. You need the right tool at the right time. Healthy soil does one kind of work. Mixed planting does another. Beneficial insect habitat does another. Daily scouting keeps the whole thing honest. Trap crops attract pressure away from the main crop. A homemade spray helps when pests are active. A physical collar protects the youngest plants. None of these are meant to stand alone. That is the point. The mistake most gardeners make is using a single tool for every problem. They try one spray, one product, one trick, one weekend fix. But pests are not a single problem. They are a response to conditions. If the conditions favor them, they keep coming back. Gelassenheit, in garden terms, means you stop trying to force the garden into submission. You create conditions where the right things grow stronger and the wrong things lose advantage. And when that happens, you start to notice the difference. The leaves stay cleaner longer. The plants look less ragged. You spend less time chasing problems and more time harvesting. The bean row does not look like it went through a shredder. The cabbage holds its shape. The tomatoes set fruit without that constant feeling that something is always one day away from ruining the whole bed. You will still see insects. That is normal. A good garden is not a sterile garden. It is a balanced one. But you will see a garden that has order instead of panic. If you want to remember only one thing, remember this. Do not start pest control with a spray. Start it with a system. Build the soil first. Plant in a way that confuses pests. Feed the beneficial insects. Walk the garden every morning and catch problems early. Use trap crops when it makes sense. Reach for a homemade repellent only when you need one. Protect young plants with a simple barrier. That is the Amish method in practical terms. And it fits a backyard garden in Ohio, or Pennsylvania, or Indiana, or anywhere else you are trying to grow food, without making the whole season feel like a chemical battle. The timing may shift a little depending on your USDA zone and your last frost date, but the principle does not change. Strong soil, smart spacing, useful insects, and steady observation will always beat panic and overreaction. Picture what this looks like in midsummer. You step out in the morning and the bed smells like warm earth and basil. The leaves are green, but not soft and floppy. The cabbage is holding together instead of being lace. The tomatoes are standing in a mixed bed with flowers along the edge. The dill has gone to bloom, and tiny beneficial insects are working the blossoms. The nasturtiums are bright at the border. You find one trouble spot, handle it by hand, and keep moving. You are not spraying the whole yard. You are not losing your Saturday to a pest emergency. You are just tending a living system that is doing most of the work with you. That is the whole lesson. And if this way of thinking makes sense to you, the next thing I would show you is how to use the same low-input, old country logic to protect tomatoes, peppers, and cabbage through the worst part of the season without turning your backyard into a spray routine. Because once you see a garden built on healthy soil, mixed planting, and steady observation, you stop thinking about gardening as a fight. You start seeing it as a partnership.